Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If I could ask members of council to take their seats. On va commencer la réunion dans une minute. We'll start the meeting in 1 minute.
Okay, we're going to go ahead with airport.
Are they here?
Yeah, they are here.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Welcome to the Finance and Economic Development Committee. You can have your attention, please. Thank you. Declaration of interest, déclaration de conflit d'intérêt, confirmation of minutes, April 2nd, confirmation des minutes de avril, carried. We have a waiver required to add the following item on the agenda, Canada Lakes Golf and Country Club. Councillor Suds, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion here that the Finance and Economic Development Committee waive the rules of procedure to add the Canada Lakes Golf and Country Club on today's FEDCO agenda, whereas on May 9th, 2019, members of FEDCO and Council received a memorandum from the City Clerk and Solicitor regarding the legal next steps with respect to the Canada Lakes Golf and Country Club. Therefore, be it resolved that Finance and Economic Development Committee approve the addition of the City Clerk and Solicitor's memo with respect to the Canada Lakes Golf and Country Club as a discussion item on today's meeting.
Right, so on waiving the rules, carried. On the motion, carried. So this is just backing up our legal position on this important issue in Canada. If anyone would like to speak to any item that's on the agenda, if you could please register just under the television screen, and we'd be happy to hear from you. So we have two major presentations because the folks from the airport are from outside the city. We're going to, as a courtesy, allow them to go first, and then we'll have our LRT update, but we'll go through the consent agenda first to see if we can free up some staff to go back and do other important work. Item number 3, 2018 procurement year in review, l'année de l'approvisionnement en révision. Received. Corporate Finance Service de Finances Municipales, Operating and Capital Budget Q1 Status Update. Received. Conservation Authorities 2019 levies. Carried. Revenue Service General Accounts write-offs for 2018, $119,407. Carried. Municipal Accommodation Tax, we have a presentation by our City Treasurer, and our folks from Ottawa Tourism are here as well. We'll come back to that. Bureau du greffier municipal de l'avocat général, service en français. Je pense que le conseiller El Chantiri va donner quelques mots, et après cette présentation, c'est la responsabilité de M. Jean Cloutier qui était la liaison et les liens avec ce comité. Monsieur le conseiller, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le maire. Merci à la carte de la DSF pour le bon travail sur le rapport annuel. C'était un plaisir de travailler avec Michel et son équipe. Vous serez en bonne main avec le conseiller Cloutier pour le nouveau mandat de CCSF dessus de bons updates. Just in case I mess it up in French, I just want to say thank you to Michelle and her team. Michelle, she did a great job being a manager of the French language in the city, and I feel honored to have my colleague to my left is going to carry on that tradition, working with our staff for the French language. So merci beaucoup, Michel.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le conseiller. Conseiller Cloutier, s'il vous plaît.
Juste brièvement, Monsieur le maire, merci beaucoup. Et conseiller El Chantiri, merci énormément. Vous avez absolument raison que le bureau du département des services en français fait un travail hors pair. Et merci de votre implication au sein du comité consultatif. Et j'ai de grands souliers à combler. Et ça me fait plaisir de travailler avec mes collègues au département avec Michel et son équipe.
Oui,
Merci,
oui,
M. le maire.
et certainement pour moi, c'est une occasion pour dire merci beaucoup Michel et son équipe et les bénévoles qui travaillent sur le comité consultatif. J'ai vu dans le rapport une réduction de 27% des plaintes contre la ville d'Ottawa, un total de seulement 34 plaintes pour une ville de 1 million de personnes. Je pense que c'est du bon progrès. Alors, félicitations à tous. Est-ce qu'il y a des autres questions sur ce sujet? Non? Bon. On the report, sur le rapport adopté. Legal Services, Delegation of Authority, Bylaw, Section 5, Reporting Requirements, Insurance Renewal. Carried. Legislative Services, Appointment of the Downtown Rideau Business Improvement Area, appointing Sean Rutherford. Carried. Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Services, Développement économique et la planification à long terme. We have Montreal Road Community Improvement Plan. We have a presentation, so we'll come back to that. Bell's Corners Community Improvement Plan. There are two members of the public who want to speak. Unless we approve it, my understanding is from the clerk that they're both in support. Do people wish to have any comment on this, or are you satisfied with the Bell's Corners proposal? So on the report, carried. So the two individuals who asked to speak, it's been carried and it goes to council, and we thank you for your support. Excuse me. Next, Service de Planification, Brownfield Grant Program Application, unaddressed property on Innes Road. And we also have an individual who would like to speak if there's any concern on it. The individual is supportive, obviously, of the proposal. On the proposal, carried. So I believe Nadia DeSante is in support. So, okay, great, thank you. And then we have two items that could go
slides. I do know that people around council have a good idea of what we do at the airport, and the deck will be available for anyone who wants to see it in more detail. So I'm sorry, just because of the time factor, I know you have a busy agenda, I'll be just clicking through right here. So just the Airport Authority in Canada, so everyone knows, we're a Tier 1 airport. We're the 6th largest airport in Canada. We're a private, non-share, not-profit corporation with independent board directors. We have a 60 to 80-year lease with the government. Again, this is already a private company. We're part of the 26 airports as a national airport system. From 50 million, that system, from 50 million in 1992, we've put in 25 billion in capital investments with no cost to the taxpayer. We pay 370 as a group. We pay 370 million in annual rent, 35 billion contribution to Canada's GDP. Taxation of more than 7 billion. In 2016, we had 140 million passengers. We're probably around up to 150 million passengers, and close to 200,000 direct jobs. Our governance, we have a board of 14 people. City of Ottawa provides or nominates 2 directors to our board. Currently, our chair is Code Cubit. He just started. He is a nominee from Invest Ottawa. And from the City of Ottawa, we have, as nominated, board directors Brendan and Lisa Stillborn. Brendan McGinty, who we all know. Our non-stop destinations, we have approximately 45 destinations. I know everyone would like to have more direct destinations, but we're getting there slowly. We're very, very well covered to get to our hub airport in North America and to also destinations within Canada. International is a challenge because of our market size and our location and our geography. Who does what at the airport? Airport Authority is the overall strategic direction and operation of the airport, including building and airport operations and maintenance and commercials and development. The airlines are responsible for everything to do with check-in, boarding, baggage handling, baggage arriving late, baggage being lost, baggage being found. That's all airlines. So when you choose your airlines, choose accordingly. De-icing consortium, fuel consumption. Private vendors, the retails, we'll talk about it later. Those are leases within our purview as our business model. NAV Canada does the air traffic control. CATSA does the security and passenger screening, CBSA, Customs and Borders, U.S. Customs, pre-clearance. The Ottawa Police, we hire the Ottawa Police to do a good part of our security, and we pay for that service. So we got a 21-man police force at the Ottawa Airport. Our impact, at the campus, we have around 5,000 full-time equivalent employees. The Airport Authority itself is around 200 full-time equivalent. So although we're a small team, we have a large campus and we coordinate between all the different actors. Direct labor income is over $300 million and gross output is over $1 billion. So how do we make money? Basically, our revenues are close to a third. One is airport improvement fees that we have on the ticket. In Ottawa is one of the lowest in the Tier 1 airports. It's $23. The non-aeronautical revenue, that's our parking, our concessions, what we lease out. And our aeronautical fees, those are the landing fees that we charge to the airlines. Total budget in 2018 revenue was around $136 million. Our expenses, les salaires et les avantages sociaux sont environ 24 millions. Materials and supplies, 34. Ground rent, we pay rent to the government. Even though we've been rebuilding this airport many times, it is a sore point, but that's the deal. We have to pay rent, and it's basically 10% of all our revenue has to go to the government. So when we do have a good idea, like Germain Hotel, and we collect rent, we have to give 10%. It's almost a shakedown, but we have to pay it. Payment in lieu of tax that we pay to the City of Ottawa, we pay approximately $1.08 per passenger, and that comes to $5 million. So as our passenger volume grows, so does the payment to the City of Ottawa. We also pay for Ottawa Police, which is around $3.5 million, and we pay also interest on our debt, obviously. So there's a couple initiatives that I want to talk to you that the government is currently doing right now. We've all heard of the Passenger Bill of Rights. That's coming into place on the 1st of July. So we're involved in discussions when policy decisions are taken with the federal government on these things. So that's been advancing very quickly. The airlines are having to adapt. They're not always happy about it, but Minister Garneau was very firm on his intention that they will be in place by this fall. The other thing that we're also very involved in is CATSA governance. They're going to be transforming CATSA from a Crown corporation to an airport authority NAV Canada model. So we're very involved in those discussions. In fact, I'm leading negotiations for the industry with the airports and airlines with TC to ensure that this new organization, which should start in the spring of 2020, is put in place. So they're going to be independent. They're not going to be a Crown corporation anymore. They'll be able to collect their fees, and they're going to be able to control their expenses and have much more forward planning and creativity. We hope that their focus will be much more on, not much more, security is always a given. Like there's not going to be any change in the security requirements, but they'll be also focused on the customer experience. So those are things that we are discussing with the government currently. On route development, Ottawa is between two hubs, Montreal and Toronto, and there's nothing that we can do about that. It's the geography that is already set. And also, there's limited competition. There's good competition with the airline industry in Canada, but again, we're low population, low density. There's only so many airlines. So we're stuck with a model where we feed large aircrafts in Toronto and Montreal and other hubs. We don't have a market for wide bodies, not a lot of market. So we have 2 flights, international flights, one to Frankfurt and one to Heathrow, and anything else is going to be a struggle, but we are struggling, and we're working with our partners in Ottawa to try to develop at least 1 or 2 new international destinations. But these endeavors take years, and it takes money. I won't go into route development, but I'm certainly would be willing to meet with councillors individually to explain how this works and all that, and not give you this course this morning. But Joel is very knowledgeable on all these matters, and if there's any questions on that, we'll be able to talk to them. Our top priorities probably would be in North America would be Las Vegas, San Francisco, LA, Paris, Beijing, and Dublin. We've been working. Especially on the international, we've been working hard on the Paris and Dublin route, but again, the competition is fierce, and other models are providing very, very large incentives, which we are very limited in our capacity to do as an airport. US is a completely different model. They have other stakeholders that are providing revenue guarantees to these airlines in the millions of dollars. So they diminish their risk when they start a new route. We're starting to work with Ottawa Tourism, for example, and Tourisme Outaouais and other parties to see how we can get an incentive package that would compete against other North American airports. The right aircraft for YOW is just starting. It's basically the A321 Neo long range. It's not a wide body. It has approximately 200 seating capacity, so that's a nice aircraft for our market. Why we like it, it's because it has long range. And so that means the requirement on the daily requirement to fill that plane is doable in a market the size of Ottawa. And so the first delivery of that aircraft was to Air Transat just a month ago, approximately, a couple of weeks ago. So we're following that. So we're really targeting airlines that are going to be purchasing that aircraft because of its range and its size. As I indicated, we're on the top international routes, Dublin and Paris. Dublin, why? It's a great city, but it's also a great connecting city, so it would be another hub. Paris is a great destination, and we're working very hard with Ottawa Tourism, which I'd like to thank because they've been super as a group to work with. And again, we're working with Aéroport Charles de Gaulle to try to get that going also. Let's talk about the major projects at YOW in the next 5 years. So our marketing campaign has just started. It's called YOW Plus. Plus is for, we're going to be reforming passenger screening, our concessions, new hotel, and obviously LRT. So this is a picture of our airport terminal. You can see the big white building in front. It's the roof of our parkade. Okay, so on the left, you're going to see where the new hotel is going to be going in the blue shaded area. The LRT station that's arriving directly on the third level. Work is already started on that as clearing has been undertaken and staging of construction equipment is already started. We all know about the map of the O train extension. This is more precise. As you can see, it's passing right by Ernst & Young. There will be a station there, and again, it's going right into the terminal on the third level. This is a rendering. We're starting to work with our architects and engineer. We were waiting for everything to be confirmed before we could start, but this is a very basic sketch how it's going to look like. The hotel project in more details, that's the footprint. I think it's already at the city as for permits and all that, so it's going through the system right now to, the build should start probably this fall or late fall, and should be completed within 18 months. The Germain Group are very, very well-tuned organization, very aggressive. They want to be this 20th hotel, and they want it to be open in 2020. It's 180 rooms hotel. It's going to have some facilities for meetings. It's going to have a full-service restaurant, and again, it's opening very soon in late 2020. The timelines: the O train is projected in 2023 in service date. The Alto Hotel, again, I mentioned 2020 at the beginning 2021. Concessions, we're in the phase of we're redoing the hall, the restaurants and concessions and retail in the terminal. So for the next 2 or 3 years, you're always going to see closures. You're going to be rerouted when you're a passenger going to our terminal. It's because we are changing the whole look inside. It's a very exciting project. What's really exciting about it, and I can't wait till announce it officially, everyone will be invited from the City Council. We've got a lot of local flavor in it, and that was one thing that we really wanted to stress with our master concessionaires. So you're going to see some familiar names from Ottawa in the terminal, and that was a very critical component of the bids when we looked at them. Passenger screening, we're in the process of moving it up to the third floor, so when you check in, you're going to be on the same floor where you're going to go through passenger screening. Much more room. You're going to have more room to divest and revest when you come in. It's going to be less cramped. And the existing area where your passenger screening is going to become a food court and all that. So I'll just go quickly through some of the renderings. This is the view that we're going to be seeing to go to the new CATSA screening area on the third floor. This is how much more space you're going to have. It's going to have a modern CATSA Plus, which is going to increase the efficiency of passenger screening. You're going to then go down to the food court. There's going to be a new ramp elevators that's going to be built. Again, we're going down here. You're going to have, that's by gate 18, I think, where when you go to Toronto, it's typically that's the gate. Like these renderings are preliminary. I've seen the renderings of the master concessionaire. We don't want to scoop ourselves. The announcements are coming in a couple of weeks, so you'll have much better renderings of who's going to be renting space there. Going to have an improved food court. Mayor, you had suggested, I think, the place on Queens, what's it called? Queens Market. So we've taken that advice, and you're going to be certainly like what we've come up with. It's something very, very similar. So you're going to have new retail enhancements. Everything is going to be redone. We're going to also have a new third-party lounge. Porter vacated their lounge. That was their business decision. They decided that they did no longer want to offer lounges to any airport other than Billy Bishop. So we're going to have a new lounge operator that's going to take that space, that's going to be available for anyone at a price, basically. Land development is an important component to generate revenue so we can keep our fees low. So again, we've been working with the city planning department to ensure that we're able to develop, and there's more coming. I guess we're going to be focused really on the piece of property by Ernst & Young because it's going to be a new terminal for LRT. So we think there's opportunity there to get the right project, but we're going to be very patient because again, it's a nice piece of property. The airport operating influence zone is important. A noise-sensitive zone around the airport. As you know, we try to protect it fiercely. There's only one reason we do that. It's not to annoy people that want to develop. It's because noise complaints always happen if you allow development too close to an airport. Despite all the efforts, it has been proven many times the only way to prevent a series of noise complaints in the future is to have adequate development around an airport. So it is an advantage for Ottawa, and it'll be an advantage in the future that we don't have any curfews, and because the development has not encroached on airport in operating influence zone. So that's why it's always very important, and that's why you'll always see the airport trying to protect that zone. So that was a very, very quick rundown on the airport. The projects that we're putting forward in the next 5 years are over $100 million in capital investment. The LRT station, for example, is $25 million. The hotel is a $40 million investment by Germain, and the rest is the concessions and CASA. Yeah. So, welcome for any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Laroche. Just one point of clarification. When you said the completion date 2023, the general manager of transit says it's 2022. So we'll have to change your slide deck.
Okay, yeah, that's 2023 is the Trillium line, and 2022 airport link. So, okay, yeah. We may be 6 months off, I'm sure.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions to the delegation? Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Well, thank you very much. I think this was really helpful because, you know, you're a key part of the tourism community, but also the broader economic development picture is important. You're investing $100 million, which is a great, significant amount, and we wish you continued success.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Merci pour votre support toujours. Merci.
Mon plaisir. À la prochaine. Au revoir. Okay, I'm just checking to see if we have other items here that are quick. I don't think so. I know there's some people here for other items. So the two that we've held is the municipal accommodation tax as well as the Montreal Road Community Improvement Plan. But now we have the presentation on the Confederation Line. So we'll ask Mr. Manconi and his team to come forward and present where we stand on LRT at this point. I think we'll just get those nameplates changed, because I don't think that's Krista Keeley. There we go. Okay, so Mr. Manconi and Mr. Morgan, the floor is yours. We have a presentation et je pense que il y a de interprétation qui est disponible aussi, so interpretation is available.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bonjour à tous. Mr. Mayor, I want to start off the presentation today. I'm going to kick off with the incident that occurred last week, the derailment in the yard. I want to just provide you with some background and tell you how we've closed off on that. So last Friday, and then I'll move into the update, the broader update of the LRT system. So last Friday, during our morning launch testing and practicing exercises, a trail derailment occurred at the Belfast Yard. That's within the maintenance facility. It was not on the main line. And that was due to an incorrect switch movement. It was a human error. What was occurring was a train that was traveling at the right speed. There's a very low speed restriction within the yard. That's what you do because there's a lot of movements, a lot of trains, curves and switches and so forth. Had one set of the wheels shift off the track at a switch location where they moved from one track over to the other. It's important to note that unlike the main line, currently in the yard system, the switches are manually controlled. Out on the main line, they're all CBTC controlled. Within the yard, there'll eventually be full CBTC control. We're just transitioning to that right now. So that's an important point because I know people asked, you know, could this occur out in the main line and so forth. They are not manually controlled out there unless you're into override systems and so forth. There were no injuries and only minor repairs were required to the switch mechanism. The vehicle's been inspected, doesn't appear to have any major repairs or requirements like that. I know there was, you know, social media quotes out there that there was cranes en route and the train was on its side. That was not the case. This is a picture of the train at the location where the switch slide off occurred. And one of the comments was there was a lot of personnel out there. That was by design, Mr. Mayor and members of committee. We used this opportunity to do a training exercise, so the event occurred. This does occur in yard facilities. I'm not minimizing it. The number of personnel that were there, they were actually doing the actual mechanical work of moving the train back onto the track. Others were observing, taking notes and so forth, so there's a large presence of vests and hard hats there, and that was by design. So, unfortunate incident, but it's a great learning moment, and that's part of testing and commissioning. This is not, and again, I'm not minimizing it. This does occur during startup operations and even in normal operations. It's not unheard of. You want to minimize the occurrences, which leads me into this next slide. So those of you that were on council previously, remember that you approved a safety management system. It's a very robust, best-in-class safety management system that reports through eventually to you, to council. You'll be receiving an annual report, and you also invested in an independent reviewer of that safety management system. And the thrust of that is that you take safety as an iterative process. You are always striving for perfection, and we take every single incident very, very seriously. And we're open and transparent about it. We had a press conference on site. That was by design so people could see the train and what we were doing out there and so forth. The safety management system has a bunch of key things that are critical to, you know, driving the culture and the system to ensure it's safe. We consider it in everything that we do. We have overarching goals, and reporting and investigating protocols are in place to identify what's occurred with any incident and to prevent the reoccurrence from happening again. So in accordance with that safety management system, which is very prescriptive, there's protocols and so forth, an investigation was immediately launched, and the morning launch activity of the trains were ceased. That was the right call. That's what you do. You freeze the operation, and we restored service by 3 p.m. And we have done the debriefs, the reviews, so forth. We also invested, as you know, I have a safety management officer that reports directly to me. He's been involved in it, RTG, RTM, and so forth. And so there are a number of operational and procedural changes that have been implemented. So, Mr. Mayor, now I'm going to transition to the LRT update that you were looking for today. So I'm going to start off with the stations. All 13 stations have now received occupancy permits, and they're literally in the final cleanup of those stations. You're seeing the hoarding coming down, they're actually cleaning the glasses, they're sweeping, they're mopping, all those things. I know people were asking about Rideau Station, so all those stations have occupancy permits. There's some final paperwork that needs to be done. That's moving, and I want to thank Mr. Willis and his team. He's put on a dedicated team of inspectors, and they've been phenomenal. When you see Frank Bedin and his team, just thank them. They've been outstanding, working weekends, nights, and so forth. The RTG is making progress, and it's evident in certain elements of the work. I'm going to take you through, I have 2 pictures of each station, and they definitely demonstrate the completeness of where we are. We're literally down to decals on stations. Many people have commented, and there's Tunney's Pasture, not even in service yet in terms of open to the public, but already the bike racks that you invested in are being used. Key elements that you invested in, that could have been plain glass on the ceiling, but there's beautiful artwork that's integrated into that station and gives a great feature to those that use it. Bayview Station, very critical. I present this shot to you because there's many connection modes to all of the station. On the other side, there's a fully accessible MUP for cyclists and people that don't want to take the stairs, lighting, LED lighting features, wayfinding, and so forth. Pimisi, when you get down there, it is just a magnificent space built for the future. The underground connection that you can walk, cycle through, the lantern with the big white O, white and red O symbol, great architectural features, etched glass on the upper concourse, and so forth. Inside of Pimisi, demonstrating again how all these stations are open, airy, there's no dark nooks or crannies, places for people to linger around. They're very welcoming and friendly with art integrated throughout them. Lion, again, fantastic architectural design features, very bright. That is underground, and you can tell that it's a very welcoming space. It's a very large space. You've built it for the future. You have capacity and size for 50 years of build-out, unheard of in terms of these projects, in terms of what's been done. And I already know people that work in that building that can't wait in the middle of winter not to even have to wear a coat. They're fully integrated into their workspace and their commute. Another shot of Lion, that could have been boring gray concrete walls, but you chose to invest wisely in integrating art, and then again, that's a nice stairwell feature, escalator feature, and so forth. Parliament, the ceiling artwork is done, and fare gates are up and operational, wayfinding, and so forth. Again, could have had boring steel in the middle of those 2 tracks. Instead, there's some really well done artwork that's both a safety feature and a piece of art. Rideau, it's now, we have occupancy permit. You can tell it's completed. Etched glass in the back, wood ceilings, wayfinding, connection. You're seeing the signage inside the Rideau Center being changed to direct people to here, and it's really completing that important hub. Some additional wayfinding and fare gates. U of Ottawa, we have a meeting with University of Ottawa today. They're excited about this. They're using it for their marketing and their branding. You gave them the privilege of having a station named after their university, and to have a direct connection to this important infrastructure is so important. Inside of U of Ottawa underneath, you see the MUP in the back and integration with the elements. Lees Avenue, again, the lantern feature with the red O, symbolic. By the way, I should mention, you're going to start seeing, they've already started out on the roadways, wayfinding signs that our traffic operations are putting in there with the O. So the O is everywhere. Lees Avenue, a shot from above. Herdman, integrated layup, very busy transfer point, great architectural features and amenities. Tremblay connection to our VIA partners. Yes, we will be doing integrated trip planning so that when you buy your VIA ticket, you can also buy a ticket on our system. They can't wait to be doing that with us. Inside of Tremblay, Saint Laurent, they've spoken to the mall owners. They're very excited about how this is going to transform their mall. and again, some excellent work that's been done within the station. Sayreville lights up at night, great integration, you can't miss it, and some of the lighting features there that you see embedded, not only are there good lighting features, they're efficient lighting features, and so forth, so it aligns with your other council priorities. And just another shot of Sayreville. Blair, you've seen before. So, Mr. Mayor, now I'm going to talk to you about where we are with the project. So that's a tour of the stations. They've received their occupancy permits. So RTG has submitted their substantial completion paperwork and relevant paperwork. The substantial completion process is guided by the project agreement, and I'm going to walk you through how that works in a moment, and I'm going to talk about trial running and revenue service availability, all those pieces, because I know many of you asked me, where are we in the process? So success today is that you know exactly where we are in the process. We are required, per the project agreement, to review the request for substantial completion, and it's an important step for them to get to the next step of the process. Once we review, it then goes to the independent certifier. This is not the safety person. I'll talk about that in a moment. This is the independent certifier that looks at the request for substantial completion sign-off. I can tell you that RTG, because everybody's asking about what's the RSA date, continues to say the system will be completed and achieve RSA by the end of Q2 2019, which is the end of June 2019. And a reminder, we've always said we need about a month to get into revenue service. So the position for RTG right now is they're sticking with that. They're completing the final closeout and completion of work, and testing and commissioning, as you know, by all the videos, the trains that you're seeing and so forth, is continuing out on the system. So what is substantial completion and where does it take you? So substantial completion signifies that the project has advanced to the point where construction and testing is effectively complete. It means they're done. And it applies to all elements of the system, the trains, the rail, the vehicles, and so forth. So it's everything that you've paid for in that $2.1 billion contract. And there can be no restrictions that materially impairs our use of the system. So it has to be clear, and it includes public and city use of the system, the maintenance services, and safety and flow within the system. And as you know, our focus on all the critical elements continues to be safety is at the top, vehicles, you need the vehicles for a good, safe, reliable system, critical operating features, both the operating elements and the customer-facing elements that need to be functioning, station and maintenance readiness. So now I'm going to walk you through the substantial completion review process. This is all, again, spelled out in the project agreement. So RTG issues their substantial completion notice and all the supporting document. We, the city, have up to 5 days to provide an opinion to the independent certifier as to whether we believe the conditions for substantial completion have been met. The independent certifier then takes 5 days to determine whether or not RTG has satisfied the conditions of substantial completion. And there's 2 possible scenarios that can occur, and I'll walk you through those. So scenario 1 is the independent certifier renders their opinion and says they have achieved substantial completion per the definition in the project agreement. If that occurs, 2 things happen. They get their $59 million first payment, which they have not been paid anything. You've heard me over and over again. And they're entitled to move into trial running. And trial running is outlined in that slide at the bottom. They have to do 12 consecutive days of near-perfect operations, and it tests everything. The operating schedules, the performance, the reliability of the entire system and the subsystems, and it demonstrates vehicle availability and reliability. If they pass the trial running period, the safety auditor needs to sign off. So again, the checks and the balances, and then RSA is then achieved. So they need to get through substantial completion, they need to get through trial running, and the safety auditor needs to sign off. You have then achieved, RTG has then achieved RSA. And then, as we've said many times, we need up to 4 weeks to launch. That's scenario one. Scenario two is if the independent certifier determines that they have not achieved substantial completion, the independent certifier provides a detailed report to RTG saying, here's why you have not achieved. And RTG has up to 5 days to provide a corrective action plan and the details associated with that. They can give it to us sooner if they like. And then you restart the review process, and it doesn't necessarily need to take the additional 5 days that I've outlined in scenario one. You know the elements, you've seen this slide before. We continue to monitor all those. They're aligned with what's in the project agreement. They're aligned to best practices. They're aligned to all those independent experts that we've brought in to assist us. And it ranges from fleet availability to the tunnel ventilation system to power systems and winter operations and so forth. So the status of those 9 critical elements, RTG has made significant progress on all elements. However, to achieve substantial completion, there's varying degree of work that remains, is our view. And I want to talk about the second bullet on fleet reliability and completion. First and foremost, you do not own the contract with Alstom for the vehicles. That is with RTG. RTG has an obligation to you to deliver the fleet, all 34 vehicles, in a state of readiness, in a state of virtually defect-free and very reliable, and no major outstanding issues can remain. RTG needs to continue to focus on that with Alstom, because as I said over and over again, we need a reliable fleet to go into service. And a reminder, it's not like some of the other systems where you're launching into greenfields and you're hoping that your ridership will come. You will have full ridership on day one. 80 to 85% of your ridership, of your 350,000 customers, will be on that train on day one. So 240,000 people will be using that system every single day. 11,000 people per hour per direction. So we need a reliable fleet. Now let me be crystal clear about the fleet, because I don't want any misinterpretation or understanding. We have a very good rail vehicle coming to us. And I've done the checks and the balances. I brought in the experts from across North America, people that have worked in the field. We have a very good product coming to us from Alstom. But like any vehicle that gets launched, they need to shake out the issues that are within the vehicle and get those things addressed and get them to the state of readiness that we need, because we want to have a reliable fleet across the board. So no, it's not about we can't use the vehicle in winter, and no, it's not about it's not a good vehicle. We've been through all that. We have a very good product coming to us, and if all the vehicle experts that I'm paying a lot of money to come and talk to us and review this stuff in detail had any red flags, we'd be raising that with you. So I want to be clear on that point. But like any new fleet, this is all normal. You have to shake out these issues and make sure that you've got that reliability. And I will emphasize it. You've got a very busy system on day one, and we want success across the board. The best thing that RTG can do right now is have laser focus and be accountable for getting those vehicles to the state that we need, and put the pressure on Alstom to make sure they deliver. So it is a great company, they have a great product, they will get there, they need to get there. Our preparation, look, we're very busy. We've been at this for 5 years, and it's not, I know everybody's looking at the trains and the stations and so forth. We have hundreds and hundreds of staff for the last 5 years that have been getting us ready from a bus to rail, rail to bus operation system. You've seen that in your Ready for Rail campaigns. We're ready, we're focused, they're dedicated, they're resilient. They, you know, if there's been delays, that staff, they bounce back, and they're committed. So we're doing our ongoing plans, and our Ready for Rail campaign continues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes the presentation. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Manconi. Questions from committee? Councillor Cloutier.
Merci beaucoup, Mr. Manconi. Thank you very much. Your slide number 33 said that RTG has submitted their substantial completion notice. So are we in that 5 + 5 day process where the independent certifier is verifying and then the city verifies?
Yes, so they've submitted, we've completed our part, the independent certifier is still in process.
Who is the independent certifier? Is that a board? Is that a person?
It's a subcontract with a company called Altus Group, who specializes in this type of activity: quantity surveying, measuring construction progress, measuring substantial performance, and essentially acting as a third-party independent actor in these instances.
Paid by the city, or is it part of the...
50-50. RTG's paying 50%, we're paying 50%.
And they are independent as per their professional obligations. Okay. You spoke of, with respect to the vehicles, the shakeout. I'm sure there's some shaking out on the vehicles that is going on as part of the testing. What do you expect the issues to be once we enter operational, once we attain our SA date and that the system is in use? Are you able to guide us in the expectations?
Mr. Mayor, through you, are you talking about the vehicles, the system, or?
I'm referring to your comment, there's going to be a shakeout, and I think you referred to the vehicles.
Oh, yes, no, that's what you do during testing and commissioning. You continue, you know, I've had people ask me why the vehicle's running up and down, run up and down. That's because you're looking for problems, you're looking for defects, you're looking for issues. And you know, we had everything from minor things such as adjustments to the sun visor for operators, windows in the cab and so forth. You're looking for all those things. And that is normal, associated with a new type of vehicle, a retrofitted vehicle, or a vehicle that's been built for many years.
Okay. And again, until that, the testing or the RSA date refers to ensuring that all 34 trains have passed testing and are tested and commissioned. The computer-based train control system and all front-facing and safety elements that are built into the stations are operational, are as per the contract.
That's correct. And you know, I will say this, that there is a lot of those critical elements are in very, very good shape. And what happens is there's a strong dependencies associated with the vehicle to get the final paperwork and the final sign-offs and so forth. So it's not like the other elements aren't in good shape. They are in very good shape, but you can't do finalization on those until you have the vehicles signed off and running end-to-end consistently and reliably with the vehicle counts and the frequency that we need.
Okay. Just my last question, and it relates to the May 3rd incidents in Belfast Yards, and I'm certain it was out of an abundance of caution that it took from 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. and the learning process that you wanted to go through with the team. Would an incident in the Belfast Yard such as this delay the regular launch of vehicles in the morning at 4 or 5 in the morning when vehicles will be leaving Belfast Yards? And how will the operations staff mitigate this so that while a train might not be able to launch for whatever reason, and are there alternative tracks that other trains can use to get out onto the main line?
No, that's a great question. So it depends where it occurs and what time. We start launch operations at 4 a.m. in the morning, running out sweep trains and so forth. So that particular day, I believe there was 5 trains already out there. They would have been in service. So we would have been operating in degraded service. But if that incident would have happened in the back towards one of the curves, you know, the MSF, it's in your backyard there, it wouldn't have affected anything. So it depends where it occurs. That was a critical pinch point there. That leads you to the launch tunnel. But again, that's all the debriefs that we're looking at and what-if scenarios. I will say this, on your first incidents, whether it's this or any other thing that will occur, and they will occur, we will have disruption in service. I've said that over and over again. We took our time that day because we were rotating personnel through that scenario and saying, what would you do, how would you use the equipment? It's not a complicated operation to slide that train back onto those tracks. All the equipment was there, RTM did their job. We took our time and make sure that we understood what occurred. It was the first one. We had people taking notes and debriefs and so forth. So depends where it occurs. And then there's mitigation plans, and in the worst case scenario, if you don't have train operations, we deploy as many buses as we can to get bridging service, which you've seen in the briefs that we brought to Transit Commission to run parallel bus service at a limited approach.
So within Belfast Yards, you've identified those pinch points, because I know that at one point it goes to that connector tunnel underneath the Via Rail, and you'll have the equipment or the operational protocol there to get the trains running as quickly as possible, get the trains launched.
Yes, but I'll add two other things. Depending on the time of year, you can also store trains in different locations. So we look at weather and so forth. And because you invested wisely on stage 2, you'll recall we have a maintenance and storage facility out in the west end. We'll have trains parked out there too. So that's other mitigation processes.
Thank you for the presentation.
Merci, conseiller. Councillor Dudas, please.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation and the update. I noticed on one of the slides it spoke to achieve substantial completion, outstanding work of varying degrees remains. You spoke to the aspect of the vehicles. Is there anything else that you're waiting on or anticipating will take longer?
Yes, I'll just talk in broad categories, simply because we have to let the independent certifier do her work, and we don't want to skew kind of what's going out in there in the public domain. It's along the critical elements that I've listed. There's about 5 or 6 of those. Many of them are very manageable in terms of it's either final paperwork. For example, in the tunnel ventilation system, we're waiting for a final sign-off on a document. Winter maintenance, waiting for one letter that says they've committed to the enhanced protocols that I've briefed you on and so forth. So it's varying degree. There are no, how would I characterize them? There are no showstoppers outside of the vehicles that are problematic. And by the way, RTG has continued to do work, and we as their partner, it's not, we could theoretically just say, we'll wait, but we're not. We're working in parallel with them. And so I anticipate that a lot of those other elements will get cleared up. And then there's another category that are linked to end-to-end testing with the vehicles that drive the final sign-off on those other elements.
Yep. I just wanted to know, at this point, what is your level of confidence in how this progress is tracking?
They've done some really, really good work. They have taken our advice on things such as stations and so forth. We need to, and we have, I can assure you, myself, the city manager, and others, we need to send a clear message to RTG that Alstom needs to focus on those vehicles. And again, they're great vehicles. It's a great product. They need to get that final push to get those lists of issues that have been identified that everybody has agreed to. Alstom agrees to them, RTG agrees to them, and I am being relentless with RTG to say, you have that contract with Alstom, unlike other properties where people have gone off and bought their own vehicles, and that could have brought you to a whole different problematic space. That risk and liability rests with RTG, and loud, strong messages, including today, is Alstom, you better be listening. You got to get those trains done.
Another strong message is the penalties that the city imposes when they don't meet, when the consortium doesn't meet milestones. When is the next date that we'd be looking to impose a penalty if they miss that milestone?
So you have a wide range of tools in your toolkit. You have not paid them to date, and trust me, the penalties are double digits that they have incurred on interest costs and carrying costs and financial costs. It's they're feeling a lot of financial pain. That's why they want to get to substantial completion, so they get a partial payment, and you've not paid them anything. You have penalized them every time they've missed the RSA date, and if they miss the next RSA date, when they provide that formal notification, if they miss that, then they would get another $1 million hit. But we're not focusing on that because we believe they're going to achieve substantial completion before RSA. That's what they're telling us, and if they focus, they can get there. And they're not going to get any money from us until they achieve substantial completion, and then the final payment is at RSA, and you saw the hoops they need to get to RSA.
And I just want to quickly note, it might have passed by some people's attention because there was a lot of information in the presentation, the interconnection with Via Rail. And I think that's a wonderful component because it'll really enhance our system and add to our transportation network. So I wanted to thank you for your work with that, and I look forward to seeing that interconnection and integration of the system. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Dudas. Councillor Deans?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm just still a little bit unclear, so I just want to go over. So has RTG applied for substantial completion at this point? Have they triggered that independent certification review?
They have filed for substantial completion, yes.
Okay, and does that, and so then you meet with them and you go through that list that you showed us of all of the outstanding items, or does the independent certifier start their work?
We provide them a document saying, we either believe you've achieved substantial completion or you have not, and here's why. The independent certifier then provides them a document with her opinion on it, saying we believe you have or have not.
Okay, so they applied for it. Did we provide them a document saying we do not believe you have met all of the fundamentals?
Correct, and now that is with the independent certifier who has not completed her review. So we're still in that window of time.
It's 5 days that she has?
She has 5 days, correct.
Okay, and when is that?
That expires on Monday at 4 p.m.
Monday at 4. So then we would have a sense if we're moving forward at that point. Then that triggers the 12 days of continuous service?
No, it depends, as I outlined, whether you're in scenario 1 or scenario 2. If the independent certifier says, yep, thank you, City, for your review, I believe they have achieved substantial completion, they're in scenario 1, they can move into trial running.
Okay. And then they have to achieve 12 continuous days with no problem?
Correct. There's criteria for all elements within that. There's a scorecard on
And if
that.
the independent certifier at 4 o'clock on Monday says no,
Then you're into scenario 2.
And they start again.
RTG has 5 days to give a corrective plan based on what the independent certifier has said, and then you don't necessarily need to take the 5 days for both ourselves or the independent certifier.
Okay.
You can move as quickly as you like.
But a corrective plan is not implementation of the plan. So when does the implementation of the corrective plan happen?
It depends on the issue and the scope and the scale, Councillor, so we'll have to see what the independent certifier provides them.
Okay, so in your opinion, the main issue right now is with the trains. Maybe not the only issue, but it's the... What issues have you identified to the independent certifier or to RTG?
Again, I'll just go with the broad categories that Councillor Dudas talked about. Final paperwork on some of the elements, such as the tunnel ventilation system, the winter operations plan. There is some elements associated with the telephone system for inside the escalators and so forth, which are linked to some of the subsystems. And then the rest I would characterize, there's a linkage to the vehicles being able to get to that final state, which drives a bunch of end-to-end tests. So it's not that they're not going to make it, it's they just need to clear up some of the deficiencies in the vehicles, and then they can do the final testing, and then that gets us to the state that we need to get to. But the concern, to summarize, is Alstom needs to focus on getting the vehicles to the state that we are insisting on.
Okay, and what are the fundamental issues with the vehicles?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to look to Mr. O'Connor. I think I need to be cautious in a public domain as to what exactly we've given them and what we've given to the independent certifier, because I don't want to cloud. I'll talk generally terms. There is nothing out of the ordinary that we're seeing in the vehicles that's not typical of startups. There's no showstoppers in those vehicles. Everything that we're seeing is fixable.
Anything
So
else, Councillor?
are all the trains operational?
Yes,
And it's, what, 32 or 34?
34,
Okay, and they're all being tested on the tracks?
correct.
So it's fundamentally a communication system on those trains that's problematic?
No, it's a wide range of minor things, such as, an example is there was a sliding door in the vehicle cab that needed to be repaired. It's an example. So you've got a wide range of things, but there's nothing major that the expert, independent people that I've brought in from a vehicle perspective are saying, wow, this is something we haven't seen, or there's a fundamental flaw in the vehicle design or anything like that. It's typical startup of vehicles going into the revenue service. So it's time, focus, and laser attention to detail to getting those vehicles done. And you know, the one side of kind of being empathetic to RTG and Alstom is they are also doing testing and commissioning in parallel. So it's, you know, that combination of fix these minor defects and get trains out for testing and commissioning service. So it's a balancing act that they're doing.
Okay, just wanted to ask, I know you said that we don't own the contract with Alstom, but just curious about the warranty on those vehicles. Is it triggered on the day that we receive them or RTG receive them, or is the warranty triggered based on mileage?
So the setup of this contract as a P3, the specific warranty is really between Alstom and Rideau Transit Group, or Alstom and their builder. For us, our kind of confirmation, our warranty is the 30-year performance agreement. It's the measuring the mileage on a month-by-month basis. They need to meet those mileage requirements. If they don't, then they're penalized for that. So our tool, you know, in our toolkit during the service period, the 30 years, it's really about meeting the performance metrics. Everything else about, you know, defects and life cycle and routine maintenance and, you know, updates to the vehicle, update to the software, that's all owned by Rideau Transit Group in their subcontract to Alstom. For us, it's about the monthly service, it's the monthly service payments, and it's the monthly performance.
Okay. Just back to the revenue service availability and the handover date. I always ask you your confidence. Do you think they're going to meet it?
If they're able to get Alstom to focus on the vehicles, yes.
Okay, and so if they did meet it, presumably it's June 30th, because it's the end of Q2, you said you needed 30 days. So the earliest availability for the trains for our residents, for our taxpayers to be able to get on those trains would be August 1st at this point?
You know me with dates.
Yes,
If they make that date, you're into a summer launch. And I want to talk about bus operations and you folks, because I got to take care of you and the customers. You have a bunch of things associated with the buses. Councillor Turney's nodding. I want reliability up. I got to get the train launched to get the reliability up. I'm tired of canceling routes and hearing about it. I know you get the brunt of it. I want, as Councillor Cavan on the room, the $5 million expansion. She asks me every time she sees me, the investment you made in the budget, I want to launch that. So I will do everything in my power with my team to get the launch going as quickly as we can. And the mayor has been very clear with me, and so has the city manager, what's the reasonable time frame for safe, reliable launch of the train and all your other benefits that come out of launching this train. Reliability of bus service going up, your $5 million investment through budget, staff who are exhausted, yourselves that are getting the complaints, and all of us getting the when. I totally get it. It's sometime in the summer. Alstom needs to deliver. RTG needs to do what they're paid to, and we'll launch the train, and we'll get a great bus system along with it.
It's a great segue into my next question, which is that some of my colleagues have already been doing the Ready for Rail sessions with their constituents, and I would like to do that too, but I want to make sure we're ready for rail when I do it. So can you give us an indication of, maybe not today, but sometime soon, can you send us a memo when it would make sense that we're at the point where we think Ready for Rail session would be an appropriate time frame?
I can do that, Councillor. I'm happy to meet with you. I would do it now. I think it's a great thing. We're getting great benefits, the uplift, people are getting it, and, I know some people are asking when, but a lot of people, the feedback I'm hearing is this is great and I can't wait for it. So happy to work with your office, and we'll give you whatever you need.
Okay. And you're absolutely right, the $5 million, I know that 98 in my ward is part of that, and, I have to have a public meeting because people are so fed up with it, and I just would like to be able to give them some news about when we're going to implement those improvements. Do you have any sense of that?
It's after the train is launched. We have all that mapped out, Councillor. It's ready to go. The team has been working literally every single day, weekends, mapping all that out. And as I've told RTG, because they complained to me about their stress, come and live the stress with the OC Transport team. We need to deliver on what you've asked for. And the bus component is very, very important. It feeds the train system, the expansion that you've paid for, the fixing of the routes, the reliability, all that. So we have the scenarios, and depending on when they launch and they get through trial running, we'll have a clear indication.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, I think it's important when we talk about the 12 consecutive days, if you come to day 6 and there's a minor problem, you have a whole list of areas that you don't have to start the clock back again at day 1. Is that correct?
Correct. It's a criteria. If it's very major, yes, it's a reset,
Right.
but there's flexibility and there's targets within all that criteria. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So, and also if the independent safety advisor comes back and says we're a go, it is still realistic for you to meet the end of Q2 for handover of the service. Is that correct?
Revenue service availability? Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Councillor Hubley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things, Mr. Manconi. I just want to follow up on, you were saying some of the outstanding issues in response to Councillor Dean's. One of them, for example, is the testing of the ventilation system in the tunnel. You've talked about that here at this meeting multiple times. My understanding, the testing and everything's all done. It's just a matter of having, and we're all in agreement on that, it's just a matter of having the certification. Is that correct?
There's some outstanding paperwork. The tunnel ventilation system has gone through all the rigorous testing. It's passed. And again, I'll give RTG credit where credit is due. They did a great job in getting it to the state it needed to.
Okay. And the other comment to do with the Ready for Rail program that OC Transport's put out, there was a great one done for the East End councillors. Last night you did one for the West End. We are getting so close to this launch date. OC Transport does not have the capacity to do a Ready for Rail a week out from when it launches all across the city, correct? That's why we started early with these, because residents have been asking. I see Councillor Luloff shaking his head. He was a big part of putting the East End one together. The residents have been asking for this information, and part of what happens at Ready for Rail is the OC Transport people set up laptops with the trip planner that's available to the public and everything. I know at last night's session most people did take advantage of that opportunity. So could you please elaborate on that, we don't have the capacity to do this the week before the launch. It has to be anybody interested in doing this. I think Councillor Eglai's already done one. You need to get out ahead of time on this and give people a chance to see what the impacts are.
Councillor, I couldn't agree with you more. The single most important thing that occurs once people get over the hype of, wow, it looks great, how does it affect me? And that's the single most important thing, is how is my trip changing and what do I do? That's why we've launched the trip planner in advance. We just launched the website yesterday, and yes, at those forums, we brought extra staff because we learned at the East End. It was, okay, great, I like the pictures. How does it affect me? And we will sit and navigate everybody through their trip scenarios so that they're ready for it.
Okay, thank you. And we're also going to ask for councillors' help to promote the Red Vest program, which they're available at those sessions as well. But for people to know that we're going to have people deployed at all the stations with these red vests, so that if you've got a question about, okay, how do I connect to my bus or my next train, whatever, go up to one of these people and they'll be able to help you, correct?
Correct. Look for the red vest and the O, yep.
Okay. Now, my last question for you is, in all this talk of the LRT and how close we're getting, the excitement's building, one of the things that I think gets lost in the conversation but needs to be mentioned, and that is the good work that your people are doing at OC Transpo to prepare not just for when it launches, but in case it doesn't launch at a certain date or whatever. They're actually working a dual system right now, which is very challenging, but they're delivering. They're ready for whatever we have coming. And maybe you want to elaborate on that for councillors so they know the efforts that are being put in at OC Transpo right now.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, so we're mapping out scenarios for launch, but also we've sustained the service, and we had to get through the delays and so forth, and that causes a lot of back and forth, and so, you know, really what I know the chair is pointing to is a big gratitude to the staff and to the union partners who have been phenomenal. They have really worked with us on changing things such as booking rules, overtime rules, and so forth, and it's a bit of a back and forth. The stress is definitely there, a bit of fatigue, but we're there for everybody, and we wanted it just as badly as you do.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Kavanaugh. We get that mic.
There, I think I got it. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Manconi. As you know, I've always asked the same questions, but it's related to the bus routes because you mentioned that we have to wait a little while, and as you know, it was September 2nd this past year when the routes got changed, preparing for LRT. So it'll be almost a year to get back things like the number 11 bus route. And you're saying that there's a delay between the trains starting and when those bus routes are changing. Can you give us an idea so people know out there what kind of lag you're talking about?
I don't have that exact period. It depends when they turn it over to us. Because we have, you know, you've heard me talk about that logistics change for booking and bus count and so forth. We're also overlaying, and again, this is part of the stress we're all feeling. You know, again, Councillor Turney, just to go back to him, he's asking me why he had, I think, 5 cancellations this week. Not a good week for his ward. You know, we're also overlaying all the road projects. We weren't supposed to be this late on RTG's delay, and I've got the Chaudière Bridge that's closed, I've got all those things, so we're layering all those layers of complexity. It depends when they turn it over to us, so we'll know when we get towards the end of trial running, we'll certainly when we lock into RSA, and we are planning a full update to the Transit Commission to answer exactly those questions, and those of Councillor Deans and everybody else that are asking right now. How does the puzzle all come together? I can assure you, I know how desperately the community needs those routes. I'm trying to minimize that time, but it depends on when we get the keys turned over to us.
Thank you. The other question is related to the system map that's up now. It's a post-LRT map, so people are very confused right now. Can we have some updates on it's confusing to people. How do we address that?
Yes, Mr. Scrimger is going to be sending something out in that regard. Again, not to get too down into the weeds, but we're looking at this speaks to what Chair Hubley is speaking about, is, you know, we're looking at, do we expedite things such as your route change with going with double maps on the bus stops and shelters so that we just peel the first one off, get through the summer service, and then the new routes are in. Lots and lots of logistics. Because at some point you got to change those 6,000 maps, and then you got to go back and change them again. So, but we will send something out to straighten out the messaging on that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Manconi. Appreciate it. And Mr. Morgan, thank you. Next is Municipal Accommodation Tax Update. Deputy Treasurer Wendy Stevenson is going to give a presentation. I know Mr. Michael Crockett is also here from Ottawa Tourism and continues to do good work for us. And following that, we'll have the Montreal Road Community Improvement Plan. I know we have 3 members of the public that would like to speak to that particular item, and we'll hear from them as well. Alors, on va commencer avec le taxe municipal pour le secteur de tourisme. Après ça, on va faire le plan d'amélioration communautaire de chemin de Montréal, de la rue Montréal. Et après ça, on avait un petit discours de Madame le conseiller Sudd sur le Canada Lakes Golf and Country Club. Et c'est la fin de l'agenda. So, Wendy, hello, welcome, and the floor is yours. And I think we have a PowerPoint presentation, I believe.
We do. Thank you and good morning. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce Michael Crockett, who is the President and CEO of Ottawa Tourism, who joins me this morning to provide an update on the success of the municipal accommodation tax in 2018. I'd also like to recognize our colleague, Steve Ball, who is the President of OGHA, who is a partner also in the municipal accommodation tax. And to my left is Leslie Van Cleef, who is the a BSS representative who's going to help us with our slides this morning. In 2004, a voluntary destination marketing fee was introduced in Ottawa, administered by the Ottawa-Gatineau Hotel Association. It provided the necessary funding for Ottawa tourism to market Ottawa as a destination of choice and make strategic investments in tourism development for our city. In the fourth quarter of 2017, the province enacted legislation to allow municipalities to implement a mandatory municipal accommodation tax. City Council approved that report in December 2017, and we adopted a 4% MAT, which was effective January 1st, 2018. We then entered into a tripartite agreement with Ottawa Tourism and OGHA, and this agreement confirms OGHA as our collector of the municipal accommodation tax. The city was able to leverage the existing OGHA processes, infrastructure, and relationships in place with the local hoteliers from the DMF to make a smooth transition, rolling out the MAT in a very short time frame. Accommodators in the city are required to collect the MAT on every stay under 30 days. Traditional bed and breakfasts are exempted from the MAT if they meet our requirements. OGHA collects the MAT revenue each month from the accommodators, and the MAT revenue is then shared with Ottawa Tourism in accordance with the provincial regulations and our tripartite agreement. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Mr. Crockett from Ottawa Tourism, who's going to walk you through the 2018 investments and the successes they've seen.
All right, thanks very much, Wendy, and it's been a true pleasure working with you and your team on the implementation of the MAT for the first year, so thank you for all your team's work on that as well. What happens with the MAT when it comes to Ottawa Tourism is it's divided into two funds. So one of them is called the Marketing Fund, which is representing 3% of the total 4% of the MAT, and the other is the Development Fund, so 1% of the MAT revenue. And each of those pools of money has its own governance structure. So the 3% portion, which goes to fund sales and marketing activities, is governed by the MAT Management Committee, and the Mayor's Office sits on that committee with us, as well as a number of other stakeholders in the community. And the Tourism Development Council, which is a really broad range of community and economic stakeholders in the community, again, including the Mayor's Office and the Economic Development Office from the city, sit on the Tourism Development Council and oversee the governance of that portion of the MAT revenue. And again, those go towards two different things. So the 3% goes towards the core sales and marketing activities that Ottawa Tourism does to help attract visitors to come to our city. And the 1% funds our destination development initiatives and incentives that are helping to bring meetings and major events and helping to improve the destination over the long term. And of course, you all know this, I think, but oops, I skipped one forward there. There we go. The industry is a significant part of our economy. It is the second largest private sector employer in our city, with 43,000 jobs that are dependent on tourism. It's generating over $2.2 billion in visitor expenditures in our community, and it's an incredible contributor to the tax base as well. So I know I'm telling you something you already know, but it's important to repeat that this is a good ROI investment for our community. So what do we do with the MAT revenue? So a few different areas of our organization that the MAT funding supports. On the marketing side of things, which is actually a large portion of the revenue goes towards marketing, but I want to give you one example of what we've been able to do with the MAT funding that we weren't able to do as much of previously. We do invest in international marketing for our community, and you can imagine how difficult it would be for any individual tourism business or entrepreneur to be able to market themselves internationally internationally. They just don't have the wherewithal to be doing that. So that's why the collective effort of an organization like ours really contributes to supporting those businesses to expose their services internationally. And you can see what we've been able to do in 2018 and 2019 in terms of growing our own investment in the international marketplace, just on the pure marketing side of things. But what that also enables us to do is to leverage more funding from other partners like Destination Canada at the national level or Destination Ontario at the provincial level, so that every dollar that we're able to invest, we're also able to leverage usually another dollar out of both those other partners and promoting Ottawa internationally. On the travel trade side of things, this is working with tour operators and group itinerary planners. Again, we are able to be out there in the market and distributing leads and business opportunities to Ottawa-based businesses, so they're able to directly communicate with clients and grow their businesses. We're able to host 406 FAM participants, that's familiarization tours, so we bring tour operators here to Ottawa to experience the city, experience the attractions and the accommodations, so that they can decide to increase their own offerings from Ottawa. And we've seen 19 new or expanded itineraries for Ottawa since the introduction of the MAT, which is, again, a great increase over what we had previous to the MAT. And on the travel trade side of things, one of the great things is it really distributes the business across the city. So the leads that we're generating are really going to all parts of the city, which is fantastic, and more leads than ever before. And I want to give you one quick example of one piece of business that's been won for Ottawa in the last year that was helped significantly by the presence of the MAT, but it also demonstrates why there needs to be a sort of a long-term commitment to these things, because it takes a lot of touch points for us to attract a business. So this is Canadian Sky is a British tour operator. They're called Canadian Sky, but they're based in the UK. They offer tours to Canada. So our contractor in the UK was the first contact with Canadian Sky. That led to a follow-up by our team, which led to us targeting that operator during a sales blitz that we had in the UK, along with our partners from Tourism Outaouais. Again, that led to us having the ability to show them some new product that's available in Ottawa that they weren't aware of. Then we met with that client subsequently last year around this time at Rendezvous Canada, which was being held in Halifax last year. They came to Ottawa to participate in a familiarization tour with Le Boat, which was a great experience. We invited them to come to our European client event that we had in June last year. And then in the fall of 2018, that client launched a new tour itinerary of Ottawa with 5 nights. And so you can see like that took that many touch points and that many sales initiatives for us to get that there. But you can imagine the impact that having that as part of the sales opportunities in the UK, we've now got a new 5-night itinerary that people are purchasing to come to visit Ottawa. That's a big win for us and for our community and for our stakeholders. On the meetings and major events side of things, the MAT has been extremely helpful in increasing our presence there. Since the MAT was introduced, we've confirmed 304 conferences, almost 95,000 delegates, 52 major events, and that's an estimated economic impact of almost $60 million just from that part of the business that's been helped by the MAT. And again, the things that we're able to do that any individual part of our tourism infrastructure just can't do is being at some of these international events and these international sales opportunities to be face-to-face with the decision makers on sporting opportunities or conventions, and that's what our team is able to do on behalf of our members. And you can also see that on the sort of the box in the bottom left, the 2018 MAT, where there's funding being added directly to the Convention Development Fund, which helps to attract conventions to come to the city, and also to the Major Events Fund, which helps to attract sporting events and cultural events to the city as well. And in fact, one of the biggest pieces of business that we've ever won, we won last year for 2022, and that's going to have 3,000 firefighters coming to Ottawa in 2022 in the summer with a huge economic impact. And again, the MAT funding helped us to be able to secure that business through our efforts along with our local partners as well. And if you haven't seen the video of that, of the actual award or the voting by the firefighters to award the event to Ottawa, it's actually quite inspiring to see this unanimous vote as they elected Ottawa against Las Vegas. So it's pretty inspiring to watch. On the major event side of things, sporting events, there's 23 venues across the city that we've helped to attract major events to different venues across the city. This ranges everything from traditional sporting venues to places like the EY Centre and even the Shaw Centre that are hosting sporting events now as well. One of the biggest ones, well, the biggest one, initiative that we've done on the major events side of things is in a partnership with Indigenous Sport and Wellness Ontario, where we're helping to bring both the 2021 and 2023 Masters Indigenous Games to Ottawa, as well as the 2021 Ontario Summer Indigenous Games. And this is huge multi-sport events that are coming to our community. You can see over 6,000 athletes coming for these events. One of the great things about the MAT is it's enabled us to become certainly Canadian leaders and really North American leaders in the area of destination development. There's dedicated funding that goes towards this. My colleague Catherine Callery, our VP of Destination Development, is in the room. And this has put us at the forefront of taking that long-term view of tourism and enabling us to invest in projects and initiatives that are really enhancing the visitor experience in our community. You can see we've got 5 streams of funding through our Destination Development Fund, supporting entrepreneurs and other local organizations in enhancing their offerings to visitors as well. And it's really been split so far. The committed funds have been split sort of over 3 of those streams, but you can see of the applications that we have underway now and some of the future inquiries that we have, it's really spread across all 5 of those funding streams for us. And again, this is something that's seen projects funded across the city. Everything, from one of my favorites, the Manotick Dock at Mahogany Harbor is one of the ones that's been funded. There's a winter market being funded for Lansdowne. There's projects across the city, rural cycling routes, so great citywide projects that we've been able to help support that we could not have done in the absence of the MAT agreement. And of course, there's lots one of the biggest questions we always get is about what happens after 2017. And we show what happened with Quebec City after their 400th anniversary celebrations. They grew incredibly well, obviously, for that big celebration year. But if you look at what happened to them after that, they never got back to that anniversary level of tourism activity. So this was something that has been forefront of our mind in terms of protecting against this type of hangover from our 2017 celebrations. And the good news is that we've been able to not only hold our own, but now again start to grow in 2019. And we would not have been able to do that as successfully without the support of the MAT agreement. And you can see certainly on the US and international side of things, we're actually increasing our market share still since 2017. So a good sign of successful things that we've been able to do as a community with the support of the MAT. And we don't have the final numbers for 2018 still yet. We always talk about the fact that there's just no turnstiles on the outside of the city, so we never know exactly how many people have come in. But we've held our own from our record-setting 2017 numbers, and we're certainly in 2019 we're on pace to exceed again our 2017 numbers. So we're really happy with the way that things are going. And again, this is all supported strongly by the MAT, and we're very grateful for the city's involvement and leadership in establishing this MAT agreement for our industry. So I'll turn it back to you, Wendy.
Thanks, Michael. 2018 was a very successful year, as you can see, for our municipal accommodation tax. We were able to leverage OGHA's relationships processes that led to the successful implementation and the onboarding of our new collectors. Our compliance rate was excellent at 98%. We had 2 small issues with 2 small collectors, and all amounts that were due were collected. With our first year under our belt, we're taking the opportunity to review best practices, processes, and our bylaw. We've also conducted a benchmarking exercise of those who have implemented the MAT in Ontario, and that leads us to the conclusion that we are best practice. Based on our review, we're recommending 3 tweaks to our bylaw to ensure that it's clear to all the collectors in terms of the terms and conditions that we're offering and what they're supposed to do. The first is to provide additional clarity for no-shows and cancellations to ensure that it's clear to the collectors when the MAT is applicable. The second recommendation is to formalize the dispute resolution process that we have in place today, and we want to be transparent and include that in our bylaw. And lastly is to include a provision for self-assessment, meaning the municipality can assess an amount due where the collector has failed to report or remit. All three recommended changes are consistent with other municipalities who have implemented the municipal accommodation tax. Ottawa is the first city in Ontario to implement the MAT, and we've received widespread attention for best practice as an example in all the other communities. I'd like to thank my partners, OGHA and Ottawa Tourism, for making this success. It's been a true pleasure working with you. I'd also like to extend my sincere thanks to my staff who worked tirelessly to make this happen in a very short time frame. From the time of the council approval to the implementation, we had a very short 2 weeks to implement this on January 1st, 2018. C'est la fin de notre présentation, Monsieur le maire.
Alors, merci beaucoup et félicitations. Thank you. This is a great example of a public-private partnership working with the hotel industry. I noticed Steve Ball, the president of the Ottawa-Gatineau Hotel Association, is here, who's been very instrumental. And Michael, you and your team, and Wendy and your team. You know, this has been a real boost to our ability to promote Ottawa, not just nationally, but now internationally, because we have a steady revenue stream that's coming in that is not coming from the taxpayers, by and large, is coming from the guests of the hotels. So congratulations, and Councillor Dudas has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a very positive presentation. I want to thank you for all the work that you've done and all the local businesses that have partnered with you to work to get us to this level. I did want to ask, though, that the provincial government recently announced that they were going to be cutting $3.4 million to your budget, and I wanted to get a better understanding of what you anticipate that will do to our local tourism offerings, potential, and if that will have a ripple effect for our local economy.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for your support of what we do. We really do appreciate it. Yeah, it's disappointing news that we will be losing our provincial funding for our role as a regional tourism organization. Yeah, and $3.4 million per year is a significant portion of our budget. So it's not something that can just be easily absorbed and expect the same sort of activity and deliverables. So certainly we have spent the time since we learned about this about a month ago, really digging deep into our budgets for 2019 and 2020, finding everything that we can find to reduce some of our planned expenses, but not at the expense of the core sales and marketing and destination development activities that we exist for. So we are doing our very best to make sure that we can keep the foot on the gas for those things that are attracting visitors here and enhancing their experience while they're here. But certainly there will be some things that we intended to do this year and that we plan to do this year that we just won't be able to do because the funding isn't there. I should say some of those things are a direct result of the mandate and the funding from the province. So those are the sort of the easiest ones to go away because if there's no funding, there's no mandate to do some of those things, particularly outside the city of Ottawa. But no question, it'll still hurt our ability. But it shouldn't impact the visitor experience here. It shouldn't impact in a short-term way the ability for us to put effective campaigns in the market for marketing and sales initiatives.
And I appreciate your optimism in that respect and the work you're doing to find those savings. I mean, in Innis Ward, we have the Prescott-Russell Trail, which is a prime example of, our city and its connection to outlying municipalities. I had mentioned to you that, and you were working on looking at connecting that and having that. There was a slide that you put up that showed 72 opportunities throughout our city for ongoing tourism. So this is something that's not just going to affect the downtown core. In my mind, this affects our entire city, including all of our wards. I was going to put forward an inquiry to city staff that spoke to this, that asked about the economic benefits to the city, what they anticipate this cut in provincial budget to Ottawa tourism would do for us going forward, and just if there was any anticipation that the city, our taxpayers, would have to absorb some of the responsibilities for marketing and promoting Ottawa in the wake of this cut. And I was wondering, maybe because I have you here, Wendy, if you would be able to speak to that momentarily.
I can't speak to it fully. I mean, Michael had a wonderful slide that talked about the economic impact of all the visitors that do come to our city. I think it's safe to say that there will be an impact in terms of what that spend is going to look like, because there could be less folks coming. I can work with the folks in economic development, and we can get you a more fulsome answer on that if that's appropriate for you and acceptable.
Maybe I could ask that, Michael, I understand you report back regularly on an annual basis to FEDCO. Maybe if I could ask that Ottawa Tourism keep an eye on this and maybe present back, and I'll remove this inquiry from city staff, just so that I think you're better placed to have an eye on what this will do to our local economy, and if you can provide us with that update in the coming year.
We're happy to do so, and I think the other important thing is there's still lots of moving parts with this that we don't know the full impact of what it's going to be today. So, yeah, give us some more time. I think it's probably more appropriate to come back with an answer like that. So, yeah,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Thank you. Then I will be withdrawing my inquiry.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Dudas. Good question. Councillor Deans, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the important work that you do in our community. Obviously, it's great having you here, and that municipal accommodation tax has worked out great as well. I think lots from my ward, because I seem to be building hotels all the time. They're just popping up like daisies in my ward. But I just wondered, what percentage increase in your budget resulted from the municipal accommodation tax?
I'm going from memory here, so it depends on how you ask that question. The DMF, which was the old voluntary program, was a 3% model, which didn't include quite 100% of the hotels. Not all of them participated. So I think our budget for 2017 budget, not necessarily what was finally generated, but I think our budget for 2017 from that part of the funding was about $8 to $9 million. And then we budgeted in 2018, we budgeted $12 million for the MAT revenue. So that was a big increase, but the MAT revenue actually generated more than we thought it would as well. So it's, that part's all a good news story.
So your budget was like 15 million, I think, is that right?
Our overall budget for 2018 was, James, I think was about 19 million total with all of our funding partners.
So that's with the city's, how much is the city's contribution?
Non-MAT, you mean?
Non-MAT.
In 2018, it would have been 1.5 million. Yeah.
Okay, and then
And that's
the
for
province
that's
contributed
dedicated for major events, by the way, that one, yeah.
That's designated for major events?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and were there strings attached to the provincial funding as well?
More strings than you can imagine, yeah. There's strings attached to every piece of funding that we get, in fact. We always say internally that there's not a piece of funding that we have that we can spend money on that doesn't have at least 2 levels of approval for the budget or for spending it. So.
But with this new revenue stream, and it's a pretty healthy new revenue stream for you, can you absorb some reductions in other funding streams?
Well, yeah. I mean, we absorb isn't maybe the way we're certainly adjusting what we're doing, and there are things that we had ramped up from previous years. Like you say, we had more funding now than we had in previous years. So there were things that we had ramped up. But that also comes with those expectations. You know, the people who are investing in the hotels in your ward are doing so because they have this confidence in where the market is going.
Yeah.
And I think for them to understand that there was now $3.4 million brought out of the system will probably be concerning to their confidence levels as well. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor.
Councillor Cloutier.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire, and thank you, Mr. Crockett, for your presentation and its, the impressive numbers. 43,000 direct and indirect jobs, the 3rd largest sector in our local economy after the government and high-tech employment, is very important. And we certainly did see in 2017 the wonderful work that Ottawa Tourism did and how we positioned ourselves with the Tourism Summit to avoid that, what you referred to as that hangover. Just a quick question based on the report. The Airbnb MAT tax revenue, is it as per expectations? Was there any evaluation or expectations, and is it about where we thought it would be?
For 2018, yes, we hit our budget mark. We received 400.
It's at 423.
That's correct, yes. We've budgeted for 2019 $500,000. We're anticipating that it will be greater than that based on the activity that's happening in the market. However, there is a study underway in terms of what's happening with that market in looking at sort of regulating it or not. So we're not going to adjust that budgetary amount until we know what's happening in the market. But we expect to be slightly over budget in 2019.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just quickly following up on Deputy Mayor Dudas's question with respect to the cut to the regional tourism budget, are there opportunities that we can explore with the with the provincial government, I apologize, with respect to project-based funding for special projects? And I'm thinking, of course, of our efforts to have La Machine come back, which would have an impact.
So I'll answer that a couple of different ways. First, 2017 success was a result of great leadership. So we had great people on the board of 2017, and that helped for that for sure. The question of other funding sources, that's definitely become a bigger priority for us now. On the provincial side of things, we just don't know yet what the province's tourism strategy is going to look like. They've been undertaking consultations earlier this year. They have told us that a new tourism strategy will be forthcoming in the next weeks and months. We think that it's very likely that within that strategy there will be some opportunities for new funding programs and opportunities for us to partner with the province, but at this point we just don't know for sure what that's going to look like. But I will also say, you mentioned federal side of things as well, and we're looking at that as well. So we're looking at all different possibilities to partner with different levels of government, but also private sector partners as well, because it's partly a cost-cutting challenge for us, but it's also partly a creativity on the revenue side of things problem for us too.
It was a slip, but you're absolutely right with respect to the federal. And my only last comment or question is recently Tourism Ottawa and Invest Ottawa launched Think Ottawa, Pensez Ottawa, which brings conventions and the firefighters is what you brought in pediatric oncology conventions to our city. Is that impacted? We had just launched that. Is that impacted by the regional tourism cut, and how will you accommodate all that?
So no, there's no direct impact to a project like that. We'll be still full steam ahead with that with our partners at the Shaw Centre and Invest Ottawa.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you very much. I know that when it comes to the events that we host, I've had a pleasure to work with Daryl Cox, who's incredible on this stuff. We worked together creating a relationship with Golf Canada, which has been quite beneficial for the Ottawa market. But there's also the larger events that are sometimes more difficult to obtain. I know I spoke with Daryl once about the FIBA Olympic qualifier, because Canada was playing in one of the 3 qualifiers, but I think they wanted something like $15 million just to host, which I don't know if the return on the investment is really that smart. But some of those smaller events, you look at the Marshes hosted the 2015-2017 World Junior Girls Championship, and just recently Ottawa hosted the U14 and the U16 boys and girls Ontario Basketball Association championships. And I know my son played in the U14. It was quite beneficial. Normally we go to Toronto and get absolutely smoked all weekend. It was kind of nice for the Toronto teams to come here and smoke us, so I didn't have to be away from home. I don't have to drive so far to get drilled by 50 points. But the key thing is that event was all over the city. I mean, it was in 20 plus high schools, 19 different divisions. I had a chance to go see one of the Division 1 games at La Cité Collégiale. And those types of events, the impact to the economy that no one really sees, you don't really realize it until you're in that, if you're in that community. So the restaurants, the hotels, targeting those smaller events, but that also have a larger impact, I think is very important, because it's a good use of our funds, because they don't have the big tickets attraction fee, you could say. You don't have to pay a group, an association that may or may not be corrupt, $15 million to come to Ottawa, because you can get these local associations that actually come here and have the great impact on our local economy. So I hope that, I imagine we are working on those events. I think it was great to have the OBAs here, especially with the 2 different divisions. The fact that they have so many different classes, having that kind of event and others here in Ottawa, I think is smart to look at that going forward, because it really brings the return on investment, and the investment is quite small.
I totally agree with you, Councillor. And in fact, through our partnership and our relationship with the economic development team at the city, we're able to actually increase our focus now on the sports side of things. And that is one of the places where we've identified even a bigger opportunity for our community is, we should have someone who is pounding on the door of all the provincial sport associations and things like that, because those events, they may not help us as much on the international notoriety side of things as a Red Bull Crashed Ice or something like that. But you're right. I mean, for every hockey team that's coming, for every basketball team that's coming, they're bringing at least one parent, and they're bringing, there's lots more spending that's taking place in the community. So we've actually had more success on that even in 2019 than we've had in previous years in attracting some of those events to come.
Because there's a lot of potential out there. I know just in our trip alone, when Daryl and I went down to meet with Golf Canada, we also met with the Ontario Games Council as well as Volleyball Ontario. So there's all these different ones that people wouldn't even think of, but they bring, especially if they're youth events, they bring families in hotels and restaurants, and the impact is quite significant.
Okay, thank you. So on the report, carried. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Next item is economic development, the Montreal Road CIP. As colleagues may know, we have a presentation from Chris Cope and Cindy Van Busker. We have two delegations from the BIA. As colleagues may recall, in my State of the City address, I guess about a year ago, I announced that we would be bringing forward a proposal to Council, which Council has before it now, to create a CIP on Montreal Road. We know Montreal Road is an important main street in our city, and it needs a little tender, loving care to help revitalize it. And we have a very great BIA that's working hand in hand with the City of Ottawa to create this CIP. And I know, I think, where's Councillor Fleury? Est-ce que Conseiller Fleury est ici? All right. Councillor Fleury? Oh. In any event, this is an initiative that I'm very supportive of, because we've seen it work in other jurisdictions. And we know that Montreal Road is going through an entire revitalization with reconstruction, pipes, water, sewer, better sidewalks. And now is the time to really push towards helping this community start anew. So how long is your presentation?
We should be about 10 minutes.
Okay, so about 8 minutes. Great. Okay, go ahead.
We're fast talkers. Good morning, Mayor Watson and committee members. My name is Cindy Van Buskirk. I'm a program manager with Economic Development Services. To my left is my colleague Chris Cope, Economic Development Officer and file lead on the Community Improvement Plan, or CIP program. We are here today to present the proposed Montreal Road Community Improvement Plan for your consideration. Chris will make a short presentation, a very short presentation, outlining the program details, and we'll be pleased to respond to your questions at the end. To provide some context, Ontario's Planning Act permits municipalities to offer incentives to stimulate private sector investment in the redevelopment of vacant or underutilized lands and/or buildings. In 2015, Council directed Economic Development Services to explore expanding the use of CIPs in neighborhoods and areas where commercial renewal has been sluggish or non-existent. Since that time, Economic Development Services has implemented 3 CIPs, including Carling Avenue and Orleans, which were both pilots, and most recently Bell's Corners. It's important to note that the proposed Montreal Road CIP is one of 6 city projects under the Vision Vanier umbrella, an initiative providing a coordinated communications and engagement approach in support of the economic revitalization and improved livability and cultural vibrancy of Vanier. I'll now turn it over to Chris.
Mr. Mayor, Montreal Road, the portion that runs from North River Road through the Aviation Parkway, is in essence the main drag of Vanier. It is designated as a main street. The portion as far as Saint Laurent from the river is traditional main street, and the portion to Aviation Parkway is arterial main street. However, it hasn't always operated as a main street. The development along the street has not kept pace with other main streets in the city. And because of that, rents have been somewhat lower there, and the property values have been somewhat lower there, as properties are not maintained in the same fashion as they would in other streets. However, that low rent or low property values has had some benefit to the area. Because the rents are lower, it has been very attractive to artists and artistic types of endeavors. And the nature of the street is somewhat bohemian and rather kind of neat. And so as we looked at a program that would help owners of those properties come along and improve the properties, we wanted to make sure that we did something that was going to build on some of that strength. The average rents in Vanier are about 20% lower than the average rents over the rest of Ottawa. Or to put that in sort of a sense, a two-bedroom apartment in Vanier would average about about $300 a month, compared to something about 20% higher than that. Now, we started this process in response to a request by the Quartier Vanier BIA, and I have a colleague with me here who will speak to the matter later. But we've done a fair bit of work on that ourselves. We've also done some other successful CIPs, and I think I would refer to the most recent one in Bell's Corners, where we had an application approved by this committee earlier this morning, and we've had two other applications that have completed the process through committee and council, including a new hotel which is under construction as we speak. I drove by it last week and I saw the footings in place. So this is the map. You'll see it's the area shaded in buff and outlined in black all the way from North River Road through to Aviation Parkway is the area of the actual CIP we're recommending. We have a special function, however, in the area that is shown in the red dotted line, the Quartier Vanier area, which is North River Road to Saint Laurent, and I'll speak a little bit more about that in the future. So the main program goals, certainly to incent property owners along that road to improve their properties and upgrade them. But we also want to use the program to support the vibrant arts and cultural character of the district. And we also have created an opportunity, I think, to stimulate the development of public housing as some of the upper floors of those properties. We want to enhance the heritage aspects in some case, although none of the properties specifically located on that street are designated at heritage, but some of them are very interesting businesses. And we want to strengthen the economic and the social impacts of these properties and improve vitality and livability on Montreal Road. So we did our own research. We worked with the BIA to look at that, and we ultimately looked, shortened kind of the thing to try and understand if it's likely going to work. We began with 151 properties. We came down to a list that was in the high 70s as we moved it along to our consultant, Cushman & Wakefield. They took it farther from there and ultimately developed a short list of 25 properties that they thought were quite likely to be able to benefit from a program like this. And then they went about interviewing those property owners. The Economic Development and Long Range Planning Group has been working with the Quartier Vanier BIA on this to consult with the businesses, and we held 2 public meetings to find out what they felt our program could and should include. And then we've done property inspections. Natalie and I have actually walked the street, and then we've also been conducting one-on-one meetings with some of the more significant property owners. So, key program elements. The grants themselves will be based on what we call tax increment equivalent grants, or TIGs. And this means that those grants are actually funded out of the property tax increase that would occur. And an element of this that we have as part of the application process is where the owner tells us they would not have done the development otherwise if they didn't have this grant. The actual operating pressures on these grants would become part of the budget process as we've received and council has approved applications. There will be, we're recommending, a 5-year application window. In some senses, we think this will create some urgency for the property owners to get on about the application and bring it in. The grants will be based on 75% of the increase in the property tax revenue. So not based on the total property tax bill, but the actual increase that happens as a result of the redevelopment. The basic program applies to the entire area, all the way from the river to the Aviation Parkway. And we have one other threshold. We ask that the application tell us that they expect the increase in assessed value of the property increase by a minimum of $50,000, which would equate to about a $4,000 tax increase. So it's relatively modest. And finally, we're recommending that grants be available on this basis, 75% of the municipal tax increase, but every year for up to 10 years to a maximum of $5 million, or the lesser of 50% of what they spend on actually doing the project. Now we have something special. This is where I think it's very unique with any of the ones we've done, certainly the economic development has been involved with, in the area that we're defining as the Cartier-Vanier area. So that would be the river to Saint Laurent. We have three unique aspects to this. The first one would be related to affordable housing, where we have told will tell the community, if their redevelopment project includes a minimum of 10 units of residential, and if 30% of those are defined as affordable, then we will increase the benefit that they would receive in the grant from 75% to 100% of the municipal tax increase. Similarly, if their space includes a minimum of 300 square meters of space dedicated to arts and cultural activities, then we would up the ante so that the grant would be based on 100% of the increase. And finally, again, similar to the latter one, if their redevelopment includes 300 square meters or more of space dedicated to social enterprise, and we've defined in the report that social enterprise would be only those social enterprises that are not for profit. Again, we would increase the grant to 100% of the municipal tax increase. So we're not allowing them to add up to more than 100%, so they might actually have 2 or 3 of those things as part of this, and the total grant that they could receive would be 100%. But we believe this is going to help maintain and actually augment that special character of the portion of Vanier that has these strongly artistic, and in some cases Inuit, it's the largest Inuit population outside of the north, and we think it's going to help that grow. And so finally today, what we're presenting is the recommendation that the Finance and Economic Development Committee recommend to Council approve the adoption of the bylaw to designate the area, basically the map, and approve and adopt the bylaw that the Montreal Community Improvement Plan as set out in document 2 on the report that was online would be approved.
Thank you. We have one delegate. I believe, Mark, your chair is not here. Oh, he is here. Okay. Well, we'll hear from Natalie first, and then Mark.
I almost did the same thing you did. Merci, Monsieur le maire, esteemed councillors et en particulier conseiller Fleury, merci de nous offrir l'occasion de vous adresser ce matin. Several years ago, we at the Vanier BIA met with economic development staff to discuss a program that had had lots of success in other parts of the city. Around this time last year, Chris Cope and Christine Ono, city staff, and I walked the entire length of Montreal Road over the course of 2 days, evaluating the possibilities at every step. And dare I say, allowing ourselves to dream about how some dilapidated and dated buildings, many of which are uninhabited or occupied by payday loans, could give way to a thriving commercial and community Main Street. The opportunities along the corridor were abundant, and Chris believed that with the right incentives, we could get there. Around that same time, we met with François Lachapelle, who had done extensive research on our community and saw tremendous opportunities for cultural resurgence in Vanier. We discussed the uniqueness of Vanier's. There's the obvious Franco-Ontario roots and the historic tiny city inside a larger city, but we also discussed interesting demographic numbers. Highest and lowest incomes in the city, highest number of Indigenous people living in any community of the city, highest percentage of Inuits outside of Nunavut, highest percentage of artists living in a community in Ottawa, over 15 family, women, and men shelters in a 2-kilometer radius, a high through traffic of cars and trucks, bicycles and pedestrians, and a record number of vacancies, and I could go on. Our community needs help, and Vanier's time is now. The CIP program is imperative to our growth and our sustainability. We at the BIA are laser focused on transformative opportunities and partnerships for our members. Our businesses and property owners have hung on through decades of promises of being the next in line, and finally it's our turn. We congratulate Chris Cope and his team on creating the program that is before you today. It exceeds standards of economic development programs. We are most encouraged by the added percentage of savings to developers who will integrate social services, social enterprises, and cultural spaces within their development. These spaces are desperately needed in Vanier. We're in the middle of a weevolution in Vanier, and we need outside-of-the-box development that considers the unique nature and the needs of our community. This program not only meets those needs, but exceeds our expectation, and we strongly encourage you to support the motion to implement the CIP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Any questions for Natalie? We have the chair, Mark, of the BIA. Welcome. You can switch seats there. And
I'll keep it brief.
What's that?
I said I'll keep it brief. I know you've had a long meeting.
Right.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the proposed CIP. The BIA has been encouraging the city to bring this program to Vanier for years, ever since the first iteration of it happened 8 years ago. We are excited at the prospect of Main Street facing renewal that will no doubt happen along Montreal Road. The staff at City's Economic Development Group has been in constant consultation with us to solicit feedback and to ensure the appropriateness of this program and the desired outcomes. As you know, Montreal Road has the highest concentration of pawn shops and payday lenders in the city. Many of the remaining buildings are empty and boarded up. We have our share of undesirable property owners who are holding off any development. The recent changes in the property tax rebate rules will help in this area, but a broad financial encouragement guided by the city will hasten the development of these eyesores. The CIP will also make purchases by commercial investors dramatically more attractive. The spread between assessed value of a dilapidated building on Montreal Road and a fully refurbished one would be higher in this area than other parts of the city. But with this risk eliminated of high property taxes consuming profits before a sustainable business model can be achieved, we are optimistic that much needed investment will come. On behalf of the BIA, I applaud the staff of the city, especially Chris Cope, and our biggest champion, Councillor Fleury, and the rest of the decision makers who are submitting their proposal to council. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The question for Mark. Questions for Mark?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, there's also Ian Ferris's remarks are here. I won't read
Yeah,
them
Ian
for
was
you, but they
was
are
here
in
quite a while and wasn't able to make it, so I think he's sent in supporting comments. Thank you. Questions to staff? Monsieur Fleury? Great, go ahead.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the staff and the community. This initiative really came from the BIA board a few years ago that said, you know, how can we spark renewal of businesses along the corridor? At the time, the BIA and the board submitted to the city and began conversations with Chris Cope, and certainly we're here today. So a lot of work leading into today. I want to thank the community, the business community, and also the city. And really the work begins now to regroup all of the energy and to see through this plan and to see some of those properties. And for colleagues, it's a good test. It's for the first time that we're combining really an infrastructure project with the economic development. So it's a corridor that needs it. It's the gateway to the east, as I say to many of my colleagues to the east. We really want to pull the downtown into Montreal Road, and so that the communities in the east can benefit from that diversity of businesses. So thank you again for the support of colleagues, and certainly we'll keep you appraised of the success of this program.
Councillor Luloff?
Look, we went through this CIP, and the quality of work from your team is spectacular. You guys are doing a great job, and as you know, and as Matthew Fleury alluded to, Councillor Fleury alluded to, Montreal Road connects further east into Orleans, where we've had a CIP. It's an incredibly useful tool, but it's not living up to its potential. So its renewal and revision is one of the first major projects that I initiated when I came into office, and I've been working with my council colleagues and your office to develop a work plan on its refresh. How long did the process take for the Montreal Road CIP from the first time Councillor Fleury spoke to you about it to now its completion?
Mr. Mayor, the entire process was about 3 years in total, which doesn't mean we were focused on it diligently throughout that whole time. The actual development of the report to bring it to this group, once we had performed the research, was done within less than a year, probably about 9 months in total from when we engaged the consultant and did our walk around and came to this committee today.
The Montreal Road CIP included an opportunity study from Cushman & Wakefield. Is hiring an external partner or external consultants part of the regular process for the development of a CIP?
It's something that we learned, I think, from our pilots, because we did not use them in the pilots, and then our pilots gave us kind of a mixed bag of success, if you will. When we got to Bell's Corners, it was the first time we'd use an external partner to help us assist in looking at such things as highest and best use and best value. And we learned from that we're better able to assess it. And I think if we had a situation where we needed to assess, we could learn the opposite direction. It could recommend that we not proceed. But once we've proceeded, that process also led very strongly in terms of the marketing of it. And nearly all of the applications that have come forward in Bell's Corners were people we talked to as part of the consultation. So it's a bit of pre-marketing as well.
That's awesome. So the Montreal Road CIP will be valid for a period of 5 years, and you kind of alluded to why you've done it that way. Can you unpack that just a little bit? What does the hard stop on the end of a CIP do to help get businesses working?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the hard stop gives us an opportunity to talk now to developers or possible developers and even possible future purchasers of property along Montreal Road to say to them, you know what, this is an opportunity that will help you and ultimately help you perform a successful project on that road. But given that they take 2 to 3 years for their planning process, they need to come into us probably early in that stage and ultimately get it to the point where they can complete it, build it, get it reassessed, start paying taxes at the higher amount, and ultimately then get their grant. And so 5 years gives us something we can say to them, let's work now, let's do it now, not wait.
With the exception of the hard work on behalf of the councillor that Vanier is quite used to, how will the Montreal Road CIP be marketed to relevant stakeholders to ensure the maximum uptake?
Mr. Mayor, we're not complete in our planning yet, although we've had preliminary discussions with the communications group, but we have a sensation that it will have to include not just the existing property owners, because we do want to talk to them, and not just the businesses, and we'll certainly work with the BIA to get them, but we also think there are going to be organizations we have to get out and speak to, and these will be organizations of planning groups and planning group staffs, real estate associations, real estate agents themselves and their brokers, and BOMA and that sort of thing. So we will develop this list fairly shortly, actually, as soon as council approves it, and hopefully they will, and then get out and start executing on that so we get as wide coverage as we can.
La qualité de notre travail est extraordinaire, surtout lorsqu'on prend en considération le nombre de partenaires qui sont impliqués. Cindy, Chris, Matt, le travail de votre équipe est exemplaire. Bravo et merci.
Merci. C'est tout. Merci. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark, for your continued leadership on a voluntary basis as chair of the BIA. And Natalie, merci. So on the report, carried. Adopté. Merci. Thank you all. Next item is, I didn't apologize, I didn't give Councillor Suds an opportunity to speak to her motion on the Canada Lake, so I'll ask her to speak to that briefly, and then we'll be close to adjournment.
Thank you, Mayor. I do promise to be brief. Thank you for the opportunity and the support this morning to add this to the agenda. I can assure everyone that when I took office in December, I had no idea that 2 weeks later, we'd be faced with Club Link's intentions and announcement to redevelop the golf course, which is really integral to the Canada North community. It really shook our community. Frankly, it shook myself 2 weeks into the role. But our community has always believed that the 40% agreement protected our green space, and we've always been told that. It's a very unique agreement, it's one of a kind, and it's quite powerful in that it laid out back in 1981 how our community would grow and what it would look like for years to come. Since that announcement back in December by Club Link, I have been working very closely with staff and obviously with the community. And I have been very clear in my communications that the issue before us is a legal issue. It's not a planning issue yet. It's not a golf course issue. It is a legal issue. And it's a legal issue of which outside counsel to the city, BLG, has provided their opinion after reviewing the documents and their sentiment, their belief that the agreements are enforceable. I wanted to take the opportunity, of course, to commend our city clerk and solicitor, Mr. O'Connor, for sharing his intended course of action with council in seeking a determination from the Superior Court of Justice to determine the enforceability of these agreements. I'd like to thank Mr. O'Connor as well as Mr. Mark, who I believe is here, for their work on this issue. It hasn't been easy. It's spanned the course of these last number of months, but I'd like to thank them for those efforts, as well as staff, the Mayor, Chair Harder, all of you that have been working side by side on this issue. So I'm thrilled, obviously. I'm very happy to hear that we will proceed to court to seek clarity on these agreements if and when Club Links comes forward with any development or zoning application. I think this is the right thing to do as a council and as a city, and I thank everyone for their support.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Sudds, and thank you for your work on this file. Notice the motion for consideration of subsequent meeting. Est-ce qu'il y a des autres motions pour une autre réunion? Inquiries, Councillor Dudas has withdrawn her inquiry. Other business? Adjournment. Meeting adjourned. Carried. Thank you.